Hey guys, you're watching Dansky, the place to be to develop your creative skills. Welcome to episode 2 of Subscriber Design Feedback. This is where you send me your designs, I pick out a bunch, review them, critique them, all that good stuff. And I've had plenty of submissions, so thank you to everyone for submitting your designs to be reviewed. I've got a bunch I'm gonna do today. I've got plenty more that we can use for a future video as well. So that's exciting because I love doing this. I love seeing what you guys are working on, but also I get the chance to have my opinion on your work, which is cool and hopefully helpful. So if you like what we're doing with these videos, then send your work to foreverdansky@gmail.com with the subject "Feed Me Back." And you'll have a chance to have your work featured here on one of these videos. So anyway, without further ado, let's jump into it. We're gonna cut to the screen. Okay, so first up, we have a logo for Zada. I don't know what this says underneath. Turistica? I'm guessing it's something to do with tourism, potentially. We've got the kind of building icons in here as well. So we've got ZADAR. First impressions, love the color. The logo is really the kind of focal point of this. And then underneath, you've got this in a, I'd say light to medium gray, which is quite nice because it keeps the focus on the logo, but you've got this sub message under here as well. I'm not entirely sure what that says, but if you can read or speak this language, I'm sure that this will make a lot more sense to you than it does to me. Of course, as I mentioned in the last video, with the first 2 episodes of this, you guys sent me your work and I forgot to ask for any kind of context. So I'm just looking at this for what it is without any kind of context or other understanding beyond what I'm actually seeing. So if I were to give this some feedback, I would love to see this vertical part of the R here. I forget which part of the letter this is called. I would love to see it the same width as the A's and the D as well. So whether this was a bit thicker on the R or the A's and the D's were a bit thinner, just a little bit more consistency, because here we have them back to back, they are touching, so it just makes that difference in thickness a bit more apparent. Something else I'd love to see as well is if there's a way to experiment with the overlap style we've got going on with the other letters here. You can see the all overlap except for the A and the R, if there's a way to kind of get that overlap in there somehow as well. And we have the buildings at the top here. This one is quite clearly meant to be some kind of building, tower, tall structure. Whereas this one over here, I think that's meant to be like a smaller building or something, but I'm not really sure entirely what it is. So I think both of these, just a little bit more definition to make them a little bit more obvious. It doesn't need to be too much because I think simplicity is brilliant and I love the simplicity of this logo, but just work on the shape a little bit more just to make it a bit clearer what each of these are. And if this one here, this smaller one is a building, just make it look a little bit more like a building, or the type of building this logo might relate to would be my advice. Also, something that I've just noticed now that I'm looking at this is that it'd be great if this could line up with this part of the D below. So this white area in the middle here, I've just noticed there's a little bit of misalignment there. I don't know whether that's necessarily an issue or not, but it is just something that I've just noticed looking at it. But apart from that, this is a really cool logo. I love the colors. There's like a nice graduation from the purple to the pink to the red, orange and yellow. So that is lovely. And yeah, so thank you very much for submitting this. Really, really cool. Anyway, let's move on to number 2. So we have a logo, musical air. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. There we go. Bit bigger. So I really love the concept behind this. We've got a musical note, as you can see here. And then we kind of have these swooshes on both the left and the right side to kind of indicate air movements, something like that. I love the concept. If I was going to critique this, I would look for a bit more consistency in how the corners are treated. So you can see here we have some really sort of sharp edges, and then here we have some slightly rounded off edges. We have a sharper edge here, but a rounded edge there. This part here, this curve could be a little bit smoother, but the same with the lower half of the logo as well. We've got a nice big curve here, smaller curve here, and a spiky sharp bit here. So just a little bit more consistency in how those edges are treated, whether it's kind of all sharp or all curved. Just a bit more consistency there I think would be fantastic. I think the colors are really cool. As I mentioned before, no context apart from what I'm actually seeing. So the colors look great. You've got air, you think of the sky perhaps. So some kind of blue seems pretty suitable, but it's hard to know without fully understanding exactly what this is for. I think in terms of the font, for me, the logo mark itself, this part here, feels very modern and contemporary, and I think with a little bit of refinement, this would look absolutely stunning. But I think the font choice just feels, this kind of flowing script font just feels a little bit more kind of handwritten. It doesn't feel like it matches the simplicity of this mark. So I think some kind of sans serif font, something a bit more clean and contemporary to match this mark would look really good. And we have the kind of grungy effect over some of the letters as well. I don't think that really adds anything with the lettering. I think if you're gonna add that kind of grunge effect, if it does relate to what this logo is for specifically, I think it'd be great to see that treatment carried onto the mark itself as well. So whether we have grunge or no grunge, just carry that style from both the text to the mark. But yeah, as I say, I think a really clean, contemporary, sans serif font that fits well with the kind of weight of this logo would look really, really slick. Cool, right, awesome. On to the next one. So next we have an illustration. Now this is quite honestly awesome. This is some, what feels very tribal illustration. We've got like some kind of gem up here. I mean, I'm definitely no illustrator by any means, but this is just awesome to look at. I love the gradient in the circle at the background. It's very subtle, goes from like a purpley pink through to a red. We've got that pattern repeated as well. And if I just zoom in, you can see we've got all the line work here around the edge. And then we've got the highlights and some shadows to really kind of help some of the, I think they're leaves or feathers, whatever they are, in her hair just stand out a little bit more. We've got some highlights on the hair, and adding these highlights in these shadows is like a really subtle thing. But when you add it to an illustration such as this, it really just gives the whole thing some more depth and just helps it feel a little less flat. So this is really, really cool. It's very different to a lot of the things that have been submitted so far. So it's nice to get some illustration in there. I love illustration. Like I say, I'm not an illustrator, but I've got a lot of respect for people who create these really cool illustrations. And I love the eye as well. I mean, if I were to give any feedback, it would be that this kind of brush stroke here with this brush effect just feels a little bit out of sync with everything else. And maybe her eye would benefit from some color, particularly the iris. Maybe the same blue here so it matches. I don't really know, but I think generally as an illustration, as a piece of art, this is awesome. Righty-ho, on to the next one. So number 4, credit card payment. So this is an app screen by Dan Hebard, and I've had conversations with Dan before. I love his style. Something I love about Dan's work is, from what he's shown me, he always pays attention to the smaller details, the spacing, making sure that everything is consistently spaced, your margins around the edge of the screen, all that good stuff is just well respected. And I love Dan's style. It's really clean, really simple. This is for a select your payment method screen. So there's clearly some step process here. You go from the shopping cart to the billing page to the payment, and then you complete the payment. I think at the top here, these work really well. I'd probably space them out a little bit more, just so there's a bit more space in between each one. But you can see, as I mentioned a moment ago, all those spacings in between each of those, all those spacings, that is terrible grammar, Dan. That is awful. Dan, not you, that is, I can't speak. So I think a little bit more space in between each of these would be fantastic. You could experiment with some icons as well, some really subtle icons. Maybe bring all of these down to one word as well, just to simplify this top area. So just have cart, billing, payment, complete, some really simple icons, nothing too overly complicated, just to help identify this more as a step process rather than just areas of text here. There's also quite a lot of other text going on. So I think those little icons up here, nothing too distracting, but some small icons, and bringing these down to just one word each would help simplify that top section a lot. We've got a very clear call to action here, so select your payment method. I would inquire as to how this works. So switching between one payment method and another. I can see here that you've got the inactive or the unselected card behind, but how does that work? Do I swipe left and it switches round? Or if I have 4 or 5 cards, how does that work? Do I keep swiping or do I have to click on this inactive card for it to come through? And if I do, how large is that surface area? If I'm on a smaller phone like an iPhone 5S or something, which is what I'm actually using at the moment, I've got quite chunky fingers, and for me to press on that very edge is going to be quite tricky. So that would just be a consideration, is how is the user going to interact with that on a smaller device? Do I swipe? Do I have to click the card that's inactive to make it active? Just something to consider. And we very clearly have a divide here that separates this bottom part where you can add a new card. Does this need to be in a button as well, similarly to this? Possibly, just something to consider. And the or choose another payment method at the bottom, is that a link? Is there meant to be another set of payment methods, or do I click on this text here? Like, is this text clickable? Does it look clickable? That would be my question. And if I click that, what happens next? But apart from that, and those few little bits, I love this screen. I think it's really well designed, really clean. As I say, I love Dan's work. It's awesome. And thank you for sending it in for me to review. Okay, and lastly, we have a butterfly queen angel style composite created in Photoshop. Now, if you're not familiar with composites, a composite is where you combine two or more images together into a single image. That is called a composite, and you can make these in Photoshop. I do them all the time. I love creating composites, and you can see this one here. There's 5 different images, I believe. So we have the background, we have the subject, we've got the wings, which have been photoshopped on. We have the crown, which has been photoshopped, and then we have lots of different butterflies. So this is really cool. I love the concept. Few bits of feedback. I think the butterflies, they look a bit similar, so I would probably take the time to use different butterflies just so it looks a bit more believable. For example, it's very clear to see that this is the same butterfly copy and pasted, and then over here, this one has just been flipped as well. So take the time to get some different butterflies in there. The background ones, for example, again, I can see that they've just been copy pasted. Maybe just vary the size, distort them, adjust the angles. It's a bit less noticeable because these are blurred out, but nice attention to detail with that. So you've got these that are the focus, and then in the foreground, and then in the background, they're all blurred out. So that's really, really cool to see, especially this one here. This one is much closer to the camera. So again, that is out of focus. So this looks really good, that kind of attention to detail. I think the glow could probably do with a little bit of work. Just where is the glow coming from on the butterfly specifically? Is it the wings or is it the body? At the moment, it feels like a sphere just emanating from the center, but I would consider what part of the butterfly is glowing and then tailor the glow to be around that specifically. And if I just zoom in a bit more, just go around and blur these edges as well. So just blur those edges. I think I did a tutorial recently actually in Photoshop, how to blur the edge of something you've already cut out. Yes, I did. I definitely did. There's a tutorial that I'll try and link up here somewhere, how to blur the edges of something you've already cut out. So I would just soften those edges because Photoshop can cut out images really clean, beautifully clean, but sometimes it's too clean. And in photographs, you get, even if something's in focus, you just get that subtle bit of blur, and you want that to translate through into your composite. It will just be a lot more believable if everything isn't perfectly sharp. So you can see here as well, we have this kind of fringing around the edge, this sort of dark line that runs around the edge of the subject. I would take a bit more time to cut that out with the pencil, remove all of this dark fringing around the sides, and even if you cut into the subject ever so slightly, that is less noticeable than something like this or this bit of pixelation that we've got over here. And then once you've cut all of that that fringing away, what you can do is you can just go around using the same technique on that tutorial I hopefully linked up there and just blur around the edges. So it just softens that edge and it helps blend the subject with the background a little bit more. So I think the colors feel, they have like a degree of synergy here. So the background is very kind of sort of dark blues, purples, and we've got a lot of that on the subject here as well. I'd be tempted to darken the subject slightly because at the moment we have the light source from this photo coming over here from the left. You can see the left part, the hand, the face is all illuminated, and we've got some shadows over here. So the light source is clearly over here. However, in the background behind, the light source isn't coming from over here. So you kind of need to try and match the lighting of your subject to the background. So that could be a case of adding a light or a sun flare over here. It looks like it's some kind of sunset, and then that makes sense that this part of her face would be illuminated. Or if you wanted to add a sun over here on the right, or lighten up this part of the sky to create some artificial light, you could flip the subject the other way. So she's pointing this way and the light's coming from over here. Or you could just pick a different subject image altogether that matches more with the background, or pick a different background that matches with the subject. So when you're doing composites, lighting is incredibly important. And if the light's coming from over here and the light on your subject's face is this side and the shadow is here, well, it doesn't really make sense, and it can really make or break a decent composite. So a couple of other things that I'm just going to quickly mention is the crown here. I think probably needs some more shadowing. So the light is coming from this direction, or whichever direction you decide the light's coming from, just add some shadowing in here because this crown does have a lot of detail. And her hair as well. You can get some really nice hair brushes for Photoshop, and a lot of them are free online actually. And you could just gently add some wisps, or even use the smudge tool over here with a really small brush. This is brilliant with a tablet, by the way. And you can start to just brush out using different sized brushes. You can just brush this out. It takes quite a long time, and it's definitely better with a tablet. I'm using a trackpad at the moment, but you can really just brush this out. And if you spend a bit of time, give this a bit of love, you can really start to get some much more believable hair and just bring out those wisps from the hair. But yeah, when I work on composites myself, a lot of times I spend, an hour or two just kind of framing everything up, getting all of the elements that I want to have in the composite all in place. And then it's really a case of just spending time after that building on those elements. So as I suggested, you can add some light sources in there. You can add a bit more shadowing, maybe adjust the curves or the levels of your subject to match the lighting that you've added, and just take a bit more time and care to cut out all of the different elements, blur them respectively, get some new butterflies in there, mix it up, just get like 10 different butterfly images. It'll take longer for sure cutting all those butterflies out, but it will definitely be worth it in the end. Okay, so there we go. That wraps up episode 2 of subscriber design feedback. I hope you enjoyed it. As I say, I have a ton of fun doing this. I can't wait to do the next one. I've got so much stuff lined up. It's gonna be awesome. And if you'd like to have your work reviewed, featured here on the channel and critiqued in a video, then send me your work to foreverdansky@gmail.com with the subject, feed me back. And yeah, just a brief description about what the project is, who it was for, the brief, as much information as you can provide, and just let me know if you'd like me to disclose your name while I'm talking about this. If you want to stay anonymous, that's totally fine. Just let me know either way. And if you have any questions or comments about the work that we've reviewed today, then do let me know down below. If I featured your work, I hope this was helpful. Any feedback is always appreciated. But as always, like this video if you enjoyed it, take care, and I'll see you next time.